Today we are learning king and two pawn versus lone king. First, we study the king and two double pawn on the same file versus lone king. Here white king is on f2 and two pawns on g2, g3 and black king is on g5. King and two double pawn versus lone king win unless the pawn can't be properly defended or unless they are the rook pawns. When you have two pawns advantage, be careful to avoid the stalemate. Here in this position, if it is a black's to move, then it is a draw. Because here black can play king g4. Next move, white king has to move away from the defense of the g3 pawn and the pawn is lost. Let's say king e2 and king into g3, and this resultant position is a draw. But wait, if it is white's turns to move, then it is winning for white. Let's see how. King f3, king f5, g4 check, king g5, king g3. White needs to play this game as a king and the pawn versus king endgame. The second pawn is coming into the play when a key tempo move is required. Let's see. King g6, king f4, king f6, g5 check, king g6, king g4, king g7, king f5, king f7, g6 check, king g7, king g5, king g8, king f6, king f8, g7 check, king g8. This position is a draw if white does not have extra pawn on g2. This extra pawn makes all the difference. So now play g3. White says to black, please move your king away from my queening square. So white king has to move on the h7. King f7 and next move is the queening of the pawn. In this example, we have seen that the white has touched extra pawn at very last. In this position, white still wins, but he has to be very careful. Here g7 check, king g8, g5, king h7 and g8, giving up a pawn. If white plays king f7 instead of g8, then it is a stalemate because the g5 pawn restricts the movement of the enemy king. So king into g8, now king g6, king f7, king h8, king f7, king h7, g6 check. So this is now winning for. The rule to remember is when you possess a king and two double pawn versus lone king, don't push both the pawns up the board together. Let's learn the position where king and two healthy pawn versus lone king is there. Two healthy pawn may be split pawns or connected pawns. The rule is two connected passed pawn can defend themselves against the lone king. Here white king is on a8, pawns are on e3 and f4 and black king is on d5. Here white king is not participating but still white wins. Black plays king e4 and white plays king b7. If king into e3, f5 leads to quick promotion and black cannot stop the f pawn. Let's see. King e4, king b7, king into e3, f5, king e4, f6, king e5, f7, king e6, f8 queen. So white is winning here. Now we learn this position where pawns are separated by one file. The rule is two passed pawn on the same rank and separated by one file. They have ability to defend themselves from the attack of the enemy king. When king attacks one, push the other, and king captures the attack pawn, the other pawn can't be reachable to the king. It is on the way to promotion. Let's see if king h5, then f5. If king into h4, f6, and pawn is promoting. So if after f5, king h6, king b2, king g7, h5. h5 is important move. If white plays here king f3, then it is a draw. King f6, h6. Now if white captures king f5, then h7. King f5, then h7. So after h6, king f7, king c3, king g8, f6, king h7, f7. And next is promotion. Let's see this position. Here white king is on h1, pawns are on e4 and h4, and black king is on g6. Here two passed pawns are separated by two files in between them. First is king h5, then e5. If you play king g2 instead of e5, then this is a draw. King g2, king into h4, king f3, king g5, king e3, king f6, king d4, king d6, and this is a draw. So after e5, black plays king g6. Here is a big difference in the previous position what we have learned, where the pawn is separated by one file. So when the one pawn advances, they make the invisible wall for the king. So king cannot approach that advanced pawn. But here there is no such wall. King move to g6, threaten to pick up the e pawn by king f5. So here king g2, king f5, king f3, king into e5, king g4, king f6, and this is a draw. So pawns that are only one file apart tend to be a simple win, while pawn two file apart give the defender some hope in some position. Let's see this position. It is exact same position except the black king is on f6 instead of g6 in previous position. King e5, h5, king f6, king g2, king g5, king f3, king into h5, king f4, king g6, king e5, king f7, king d6. White pushes h pawn, so black king must take h pawn, and white left with the e pawn and also in time to reach the 6th rank. The rule is king and two pawn on the 5th rank, two files apart versus lone king is an very easy win for the pawns, unless black can immediately capture one of the pawn. Let's see this position here. White king is on h1, pawns are on d4 and h4, and black king is on e6. If the pawns are 3 or more files apart, then the defender loses unless he can immediately capture one of the pawn. King d5, h5, king e6, d5 check, king f6, d6, king e6, h6, and this is winning for white. Let's see another position. Here white pawns are on c6 and b7, white king is on f5, and black king is on c7. King b8, king e6, king c7, king e7, king b8, king d7, and this is winning for white. Let's see this position. Here one is the rook pawn, so moves will be different. King b7, king d5, king a8, king c5, king b7, now a8 queen, sacrificing one of the pawn to get the king and pawn versus king, winning endgame. King into 8, king c6, king b8, b7, king a7, king c7, and this is winning for white.